After years of hard work, my brother told me that I was no longer needed in the family business and had me kicked out of the office. As he smiled, saying I was in the way, I felt my world collapse. I stood there and said, "You have no idea what you've just done." What he didn't know was that my next move would send him into financial ruin. I was 45 when my brother kicked me out of the company I helped build. Our family business, Foster and Reed Construction, was everything to me. Based out of Columbus, Ohio, we weren't some giant firm, but we were solid, known for honest work, good crews, and doing right by people. I spent most of my adult life making sure we earned that reputation. My dad started it when I was still a kid. He'd take me out to job sites before school, teach me how to mix mortar and frame walls. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. I knew from age 16 this would be my life. I didn't go to college because I didn't need to. I learned everything on the ground. Permits, materials, client relations, crew management. It was real work, not some boardroom bullshit. Then there was Kyle, my little brother. 3 years younger. Always the polished one. Always had the charm. He was good at talking, I'll give him that. Good at dressing the part. When he came into the business full-time after college, I thought it would be a good thing. He could handle contracts, deals, investor types. I never wanted that side of it anyway. But over the years, I started seeing the cracks. Kyle didn't want to grow the business, he wanted to flip it. Get in bed with big real estate money. Outsource the crews. Speed through inspections. Use the business our dad built as a ladder to something flashier. He never said it, but I could see it in the way he looked at me, like I was stuck in the mud, and he was soaring. I tried to ignore it. I thought, we're family, he won't screw me. But I should have listened to my gut the first time he lied to a client about our availability, just to snag a higher-paying contract. Or when he hired a cousin of one of his golf buddies as site supervisor with 0 field experience. I bit my tongue more times than I should have. I told myself I was protecting the legacy. Then came that morning in February. I'd just gotten back from a lumbar nerve procedure. My back had been giving me hell after nearly 30 years of physical labor. I wasn't even supposed to be back in the office, but I came in to catch up and check on some projects. I walked into the office, and Kyle was sitting at Dad's desk. He never sat there. That was our unspoken rule. I said, "You're early. Everything all right?" He didn't even look at me, just tapped a folder on the desk and said, "We're restructuring." I didn't understand at first. He slid the folder toward me like it was nothing. Inside were buyout papers. Legal language. I had to read it twice. "You're pushing me out?" I asked. "You're being compensated fairly," he said, all smooth and cold. "It's not personal. We just need to move forward." I said, "This is my life. My name is on the trucks. My blood's in the walls of half the houses we built." He leaned back and gave me this smug little grin. "You've become an obstacle. You hold the company back. We're trying to scale." I stared at him, heart pounding. I'd seen that look before, but never aimed at me. "You don't get to erase me," I said. He smiled wider. "I just did." That was the moment everything inside me changed. I didn't yell, didn't throw anything. I just stood there and said, "You have no idea what you've just done." And he didn't. He really didn't. Because while Kyle had been playing CEO, I was the one who kept the books clean. I knew every shady thing he'd done. Every backdoor deal, every fudged inspection report, every bribe to get around zoning codes. Hell, I had physical copies of half of it because I never trusted the cloud. I kept backups. Emails, signed letters, even some damning texts he sent when he was too drunk to be smart. I didn't plan revenge in that moment. I didn't need to. The plan had already written itself over the years. He'd just handed me the match. I walked out of that office with nothing but my keys and a copy of the papers he gave me. Didn't say a word to anyone. Drove straight home, locked the door, sat in my kitchen, and didn't move for hours. Just stared at the walls, going over every memory, every moment I'd let things slide, every time I told myself family comes first. And now, family had just thrown me out like trash. I didn't call my wife right away. Hell, I didn't want her to see me like that. I was numb. I felt like a ghost in my own skin. The next day, I started going through my files. I kept everything on a physical backup drive. Double copies of contracts, emails printed and filed. I had pictures of unsafe work conditions at sites Kyle had cut corners on. I had inspection reports with his signature forged in my name. He thought I'd never find out. I had proof of subcontractors who were paid under the table to skip permits. All of it. And I had time. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't pulling 70-hour weeks. I had nothing but time. So I started digging, connecting dots, laying it all out like a prosecutor building a case. At the same time, I started talking to people, quietly. Old crew guys who were fed up with how things had changed. Vendors Kyle still owed money to. Former clients who had unfinished or botched projects. I kept notes, recorded phone calls. Ohio's a one-party consent state. Collected statements. Most of them didn't even know I was out of the company yet. That was fine. Let Kyle think I was gone and licking my wounds. What he didn't know was that he had more enemies than he realized. One night, about a month later, my wife came home and found me surrounded by folders, receipts, Post-its, and a whiteboard full of timelines. She looked at me and said, "Are you going to war with him?" I looked up and said, "He started it." It got worse when I found out what Kyle was really doing with the company. He was gutting it. He'd taken on 4 massive development contracts across Columbus, 3 of which we didn't have the labor or licensing to handle. He was using shell subcontractors from out of state, cutting corners on safety. And worst of all, he was using our father's name, my name, to sell these luxury townhomes as built on generations of trust. I felt sick. Then came the moment that set the rest in motion. A former project manager, Tom, who I trusted like a brother, called me up and said, "You didn't hear it from me, but the North Side project? The soil reports were faked. They're building on unstable ground. One good rain season, and those foundations are toast." I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared, but because I realized something. This wasn't just about me anymore. Kyle's ego was going to destroy lives. Families would buy these homes thinking they were safe. And when they cracked or flooded or collapsed, who'd take the blame? Not him. He'd be long gone with the money. That's when I made my first real move. I didn't go to the cops. Not yet. I went to a lawyer. A damn good one. I laid out everything. Took 2 full days. At the end, she sat back and said, "You have enough to bury him. Financially, legally, maybe even criminally." And I said, "Good." I wanted slow. I wasn't just going to ruin Kyle. I was going to make sure he watched everything he stole crumble around him. 3 months after Kyle kicked me out, I sent an anonymous tip to the Ohio Board of Building Standards. I gave them just enough. Address of the North Side development, some redacted reports, a whisper that permits were fast-tracked using influence, and possibly forged inspections. I didn't attach my name. I wanted it to look like it came from inside. 2 weeks later, that site got shut down pending investigation. Kyle didn't know it was me. Not yet. But I knew he suspected someone. He sent a vague email blast to the old office list. Something about loyalty, confidentiality, and watching for leaks. I smiled reading it. He was starting to sweat. But then something happened that even I didn't expect. I got a call from Janice, my dad's old accountant, retired now, living in Dayton. She said, "Hey, weird question, but did you sign off on that $1.2 million business line increase back in November?" I said, "What?" She said, "It's got your signature. But I know how you write your R's. This one's too clean." That's when I knew. Kyle hadn't just lied. He'd forged major financial documents in my name before he pushed me out. It wasn't just dirty business, it was fraud. Bank level, federal level fraud. And it meant that if anything fell apart, the debt trail could still lead back to me if I didn't clear my name. I drove to Janice's house the next day with every paper I had. We laid it all out, side by side. She helped me build a full timeline and a paper trail. I was going to need it. For the authorities, yes, but also for the bank. But while I was busy building my defense, Kyle made his next move.
He sued me.
He filed a civil suit claiming I had sabotaged company operations and damaged business relationships post-exit. It was clearly retaliatory, but it was smart. It put me on the defensive. If I went public now, it'd look like I was just bitter and trying to get revenge, which I was sure. But I also had the truth. That lawsuit opened the door to discovery. And that turned out to be Kyle's biggest mistake.
Because now,
my lawyer could legally request his documents, his emails, his contracts, and once we got access to those, game over. We found doctored permits, padded invoices, misreported income to lower tax exposure. We even found emails between Kyle and a city inspector who got mysteriously transferred after fast-tracking one of our biggest builds in German Village. That's when I made my decision. I filed a formal whistleblower complaint with the IRS, the City Zoning Board, and the State Construction Licensing Board. Under my real name this time. I gave them everything. And then, to top it off, I called in a favor. One of my old crew guys, Travis, had a cousin who worked at the Columbus Dispatch. I gave him a sanitized version of the story, no embellishments, just truth backed with documents. Told him he could run it as long as he didn't name me as the source. Within a week, the headline ran, "Luxury developer accused of permit fraud, unsafe builds, families at risk?" And that's when it all blew open. Kyle tried to play it off. Called it a smear campaign by disgruntled ex-employees. But the moment investigators showed up at two of his sites and put stop work orders right on the framing, people started panicking. His clients,
his investors,
his lenders, and me, I just watched from a distance and waited for the final collapse. It took about 6 months for the house Kyle built on lies to finally collapse. The civil lawsuit he filed against me was dismissed after discovery. Once my lawyer laid out the forged documents and financial inconsistencies, the judge ordered a review. Kyle's side tried to stall, delay, throw smoke. But there was too much evidence. Emails, signatures, false filings. The day it was dismissed, my lawyer smiled and said, "Now it's your move." I didn't waste time. We countersued. Fraud, forgery, defamation, and financial damages. I had proof that he used my name to secure loans, that he tried to blame me for operational decisions made months after I was gone, that he ran my reputation through the mud in circles we'd both worked in for decades. But that was just the beginning. The whistleblower filings I submitted kicked off investigations on multiple fronts. The IRS launched a full audit. The Ohio Contractors Board opened a formal inquiry into his license and project compliance. And when the city's zoning committee confirmed that multiple permits had been expedited through improper channels, Kyle's company was blacklisted from new residential development bids in Columbus. And then came the lawsuits. 3 buyers from the North Side project filed a joint suit for fraud and structural negligence after an independent inspection revealed foundational cracks and mold from poor waterproofing. I didn't have to lift a finger. They came after him on their own. By fall, the bank started to get nervous. Kyle had used the inflated projections from those projects to secure a massive $3 million line of credit. Once those builds were halted and revenue froze, he defaulted on payments. The line was pulled. He couldn't make payroll. Subcontractors walked. One even spray-painted "You stole from me" on the side of his unfinished townhomes. His investors?
Gone.
The press? Circling. And his reputation?
Dead.
One night in November, I got a message from a guy I hadn't talked to in years. Used to be in city planning, now semi-retired. It was a screenshot of an email Kyle had sent to the board, trying to shift blame and ask for a reputational reset. My guy wrote, desperate. No one's touching him now. But I wasn't done. I called my old crews, the guys who'd stuck by me for decades. Guys who hated what the company had become. And we got together at the VFW over beers. I told them the plan. I was going to start over.
Smaller. Slower. Honest.
A new name, no luxury builds, just real work. They were in. I launched Reed Contracting LLC in early spring. No flashy website. Just word of mouth, old school. Within weeks, we had jobs lined up through the summer. Then the cherry on top. I bought out the lien on one of Kyle's stalled properties at auction, for pennies on the dollar. One of the townhomes. The exact one I helped frame back in the early days before he kicked me out. I let it sit empty for a while. Just drove by sometimes and looked at it. Then I had my crew tear it down. Every board, every wall, every trace of him gone. In its place, we built a single-family home for a retired veteran couple. I didn't charge them full rate. I didn't do it for money. I did it because that's what we used to stand for. Kyle's company officially filed for bankruptcy in April. He's under investigation for fraud and license violations. Last I heard, he's living in a rental across town, scrambling to get hired as a consultant for other firms. But in this city, everyone knows what he did, what he lost. And me? I go home tired, but clean. I look in the mirror and see someone who fought back. Someone who didn't just get even, but made things right. He thought he buried me, but I was the foundation. And when he tore me out, the whole damn thing came crashing down.